Jonathan Finch, Director of Group Sales at Sales Geek. How are you?
Very well, yeah. It's been, I don't know, I tried to get outside for about half an hour before, and it was strange seeing that there's an outside world. I seem to have been sat behind this desk for, feels like the last 3 months, to be honest, with a different person on the screen, but it's lovely to have you on the screen, Simon.
Thank you. And likewise, I'm sitting here, lockdown for me is on the quay around Exeter. So I'm looking out at everyone enjoying the sunshine, on their bikes, running around and thinking, this is torture. But look, days are made better from speaking to people like you. So thank you. I know you're busy. I'm
sorry it took me so long for us to finally get this in. I think we must have both rearranged this about 3 or 4 times. So my apologies in advance. I think I was speaking to a client the other day and said, flipping out, things have really picked up. And I thought to myself, I didn't realise that things had slowed down. I feel like I've been doing more work during lockdown than ever before. I used to be able to fit, if I really, really tried hard, to get sort of 4 meetings in a day, if I was setting my diary up correctly. But I've looked at the sort of average now, and it's like 6 and 7 per day. And it's looking at it going, I didn't eat that day. That's not good. I need to look after myself a little bit more. So it's good to be able to take a step back and look at things.
So are you finding a balance now? I mean, when all this happened, we were sort of thrown into it, and there was a state of panic, and then there was a state of we've got a few months off, and then and then it started raining last week, and I think people are readjusting. I mean, it's like that, isn't it? It's up and down. Where are you with it all?
I think all the way through it, I've been reasonably balanced. The one thing that I do have is I've got a very active social life outside of Sales Geek. I've got a very active social life sometimes within Sales Geek as well. But me and my other half, my other half's called Annabelle, and we are very good at, when we have to, switching off. My head does sometimes go into overdrive in the evenings, but she's very good at spotting it, and she's very good at going, come on, we're going out for a walk. Come on, put your phone away, go and put it on charge. And she keeps a lead on me, I think, in a lot of ways from that side. But I think all the way through, we've done quite well. I think from mental health perspective, making sure that we're having breaks between it. I've sort of taken over the front room. This was already a bit of a study for me, but Annabelle took over the other room. But we've got into quite a good routine. We got into going for walks in the morning, which was really good. I love getting some exercise in the morning. That really, I think, helps me stretch my brain and get ready for the day before it's even started. The one biggest difference, and you've probably found this as well, Sam, but I used to have at least a commute to work of about 20-25 minutes. And on that, I would always listen to a podcast, always listen to an audio book, something to get my head engaged and thinking that I'd normally get to work and do a video for LinkedIn or for the hub. That was the one part that I missed at the start of this, because I had a shower, put some clothes on, walked downstairs, and I'm planted at my computer. And that brain time in the morning I think it's probably to kickstart me, to give me that jump to get me really going in the morning. That's vital time for me. And I really missed that at the start and couldn't work out why for the first couple of hours I couldn't get my head going.
It's funny you say that, because I've done a lot of running in lockdown, because to me, it's just time out, away. But over the last 2 weeks, things have got so hectic and busy that I can see how easy it is to take your eye off the ball on one particular aspect of your life. And like you've just said, I miss that running first thing in the morning. I realise how important it is, because now it's so easy. Come in, I make a coffee, and invariably the last 20 minutes of lying in bed, I've been thinking about what I need to do anyway, and desperately trying to put it off for another 48 seconds while I press another snooze button. But come out, put the kettle on, come and sit down and think, right, I've just got to do that one thing. And like we just alluded to, 2 o'clock comes and you think, I haven't had breakfast yet. And then once you start chasing the day like that, I've got to do this, I'll just do another one. You find out, well, in my case, sometimes I'm too tired mentally in the evening to do the run, and that's why I've got to try and switch that round now.
It was something that I'm sure it's Jim Rohn who sort of said. It might have been Zig Ziglar. It was one of the sales greats that sort of said, if you're not putting good stuff in, you're not going to get good stuff out. It's like making a cake with cement, and it's always stuck with me that. I think in all different areas of my life. One of those being from a knowledge perspective and what I'm taking in and listening to. I don't listen to the news, don't listen to the radio. I don't think the radio's even tuned into my car. As soon as I get into podcast, and I always found by putting good stuff in the morning, good stuff normally, hopefully comes out during the day. But also, I mean, that comes from a health and wellbeing perspective. If you're not putting good foods in, you're not putting the right amount of exercise in, trying to get past 3 o'clock is normally a drag. I mean, I used to be an unbelievably heavy smoker. I think smoking was probably one of the issues. But I ate a lot of fast food as well, but I never put any weight on. I think stress was a big part of that. Also, smoking does definitely strip you of weight. It's not healthy for you. But I'd always get to that 3-4 o'clock and be struggling. So my always go-to was, brilliant, I need a Red Bull. It's just 3-4 o'clock. So then you drink your Red Bull at 3, 4 o'clock, which means that when you're trying to go to bed at night, you're still up and wired because you've had that Red Bull at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you don't sleep very well and the whole cycle starts again. So the Red Bull just creeps up to 2 o'clock, to 1 o'clock. Until you get to the stage where, well, I got to the stage where I was drinking a heck of a lot of Red Bull and smoking a heck of a lot of cigarettes while eating junk food. And I don't think there was a specific turning point, but over time, just by making small adjustments, I feel like I've got quite a bit healthier. I'm definitely not in optimum fitness levels, but definitely getting there.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how good for you is giving up the fags and the drink then? On that heavy scale, I mean, and the junk food.
Yeah, I mean, you'll drink as well. I mean, I don't normally drink during weekdays, but from what I can actually do now, I'm not just talking physically, mentally, I can easily do twice as much as I used to be able to do. It became a bit of a vicious circle, but it was probably a lot of different marginal gains that got me out of that. It wasn't one day I just went, I know some people go, I had this revelation and I had to get fit and I had to get healthy. It didn't happen for me. But I just realised that I couldn't progress the way that I was going. I always wanted to be top of the career ladder. I'd always said to myself, I want to be sales director by the time I'm 30. And I managed it at 27 with a few tweaks, and I realised I couldn't do it in the direction I was going, so I had to sort of move sideways and laterally. But I think without making that decision, I definitely couldn't do what I'm doing now. I wouldn't have the more mental capacity, I think, and space to do things rather than just the physical side of things.
Yeah, I think what with all the running and everything else, I've had to. My sleep has suffered during this, so I don't know what it is. It's a lot of people I speak to, a lot of sales leaders recently I speak to, are saying, "Yeah, do you know what? With all the Zoom and with everything else, and your mind ticking over, I've heard that people going for naps in the day just to literally shut their eyes for 25 minutes away from a screen, or going to sit down, and that's why I've stopped. Certainly the last couple of weeks, stopped drinking." Not at weekends, that's fine. But during the week, only because I've got to listen to myself with everything going on. Like well-being is so many different things. It's not just smoking and drinking, but you mix that in with tiredness and overeating or something. Some things have got to stop, and you can just pick a couple out and slowly recover a bit, can't you?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest tips, I mean, this is something that I've only started doing over the last couple of weeks. I think it was off a webinar that I was listening to. But someone had said, obviously, with Zoom, it's very difficult. Everything at the moment is Zoom, and 90% of my meetings are done on Zoom. But there are certain clients that I've got that I'm very friendly with, and I don't necessarily have to be on Zoom with them. I need to talk to them. And one of the things that we've been doing is I've been booking in my diary and in their diary that I'm going to go for a walk and put my headset in, and they're going to go for a walk and put their headset in. So we're not walking next to each other, we're not walking together. But I found those meetings so much more productive than sitting here on staring at Zoom. If you don't have to share something, if you are talking more strategic, holistic stuff, which you can do just over the phone, put your headphones in, go for a walk, and tell the client to do the same. Everybody that I've suggested to has gone, what a great idea, flipping out, I could do to get away from the screen. We seem to get a heck of a lot more done in the hour.
It's such a good idea, and you share an experience as well. And you also, it means you're not just toeing the line of normality that, I'll go on to another Zoom and do this. You're thinking outside the box. Everyone's normal. You probably need a break. Let's get away and do it. It's quite a cool thing to do. Such a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do it running. You might be able to do it running, but I get far too out of breath if I was going to go for a jog and have a chat with someone. But yeah, going for a walk. I mean, whenever I always think about it as well. I mean, whenever predominantly, I mean, I was a telesales professional. I've done field sales in the past, but I was always a telesales, expert. But that was my speciality. But whenever I was in the office on the phone, I used to drive the rest of the office nuts because I was walking up and down like that on my phone. My pitches over the last 12 weeks have all been sat in this chair staring at this screen, and I couldn't work out why it wasn't natural for me. So depending on who you're speaking to, having that motion and being stood up, broadcasting yourself, going for a walk, that really lifts me up, lifts my shoulders back, and changes the way I think that the conversation flows. I think it makes a real difference. So
do you prefer being on Zoom and doing a pitch, or do you prefer being on the telephone before?
Very interesting question. I like a mixture of both, to be honest. I think it depends on the client. The phones seem to have died over the last 12 weeks. I mean, we're still getting some people coming through on the office line that are ringing up, but I'm talking to a lot of salespeople now, and they're going, everything's on the Zoom. Now, the phone for me, I mean, through that first 3 weeks of lockdown, I went into absolute prospecting mode. I knew that it was going to be difficult. I knew that times would, deal times were going to get longer. So that process from first interaction with the client to when they actually sign was going to get longer. People weren't going to be signing. Our normal time is around 2 weeks, between 2 and 3 weeks for a big scale project. Can be quicker, can be longer. But I knew that was going to extend. So we did a lot of work up front prospecting. I can't tell you how many top decision makers I managed to get on the phone in that first 2-3 weeks. It was one of the easiest weeks in history I've ever had to get through to a decision maker. You ring the reception desk. Hi, can I speak to such a body? Oh, give me a second. I'll just give you his mobile number. Yeah. Everybody was in a bit of that meltdown. And nobody knew what was going on. Let's pass all the calls through to one central place and they can distribute them out. Through that period, I got so many mobile numbers and managed to interact with so many different people that I think that the phone is always saying, a bit of a lost art. But it's probably the most underutilized sales tool at the moment. You ring my mobile at the moment, unless I'm on a Zoom call, you're going to get an answer. If I don't recognize the number, do you know what? You're going to get an answer back some other time. So if there's any salespeople out there want to pest me for budget, now's a really good time to ring.
I would completely agree with you. The phone doesn't ring. It's all text messages, WhatsApp, different pings and pongs for everything nowadays. And if, when it rings, I jump out of my chair. I'm like, oh, it must be mum or no, I'll answer it. Look, you are everywhere at the moment. And you're also building a really good reputation, because there's quite a few people I've spoken to in this industry that have either said, I've got to go and speak to you, got to go and speak to Sales Geek, and also you're a bloody nice bloke. So immediately I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to get, I want to find out what it is. I want to find out what the ingredient is. I want to learn, like you with your podcast. I want to see what's going on, because Sales Geek's everywhere, and so are you. Now, before we go into Sales Geek, because I'm, even the name, I just think, right, what's that? That's kind of cool. It's current, where did it start for you? Where did your sales industry start? Where did your passion start? And then what I want to build up to is what are you doing now? And how are you getting this reputation?
I mean, taking it back to the very start, I was one of the very few weird people that you meet that actually wanted to get into sales. Most people I fell into sales. I went into something else and it didn't work. I always wanted to be in sales. I can't remember where the actual desire originally came from. I was useless at school. I think intelligent enough to be. I mean, I was quite lucky. I went to a grammar school, and I think I frustrated every one of the teachers, because the whole grammar school experience, being honest, is focused on getting you into Oxford, Cambridge, or one of the good universities.
I went to one. I know. Yeah.
They're solely focused on getting you into there, and I was solely focused.
And Latin. Did you do Latin?
Did Latin? Yeah, that was an interesting subject.
Have you used it recently?
Not recently. Not many people speak Latin nowadays. But they were always focused on getting me into a top university, and I was always focused on not going to one. So there was always this little bit of a clash between us. Finished 5th year, went for a few apprenticeships, didn't really get any of the apprenticeship, but I always had some business venture or something on the go. I used to sell sweets at school. I got caught doing that and got 2 after school detentions, and my dad came in and had to go and speak to the tutor, and they went, we need to talk to you. Jonathan's been selling sweets at schools. And my dad said, I know, I take him at the weekend to go and buy them. I think it's brilliant. So they didn't get on very well from that. We got a bit of an arrangement with our local golf course, the groundsman down there, and we used to go down at about 9 o'clock on a Friday night and go into all of the ponds, and we'd fish out all of the golf balls. They were all manky and black. I'd come home, drive my mum mad by putting them all in the dishwasher and a load of fairy liquid all over them, and go down to the local pub and sell them. I had a job at the pub since I was 13, so I knew a lot of locals there, and I was always doing something that wasn't school related. And I think some schools are getting a lot better at that now, at focusing on there's other routes than going through the university system. There's lots of other avenues. I do think some of them aren't pushing that enough. So I went from there, and I got a job in hospitality, just due to the fact that I didn't get kicked out of sixth form, but they very gently, after I got my first set of results and weren't quite up to grammar school expectations, thought it was a good idea that I mutually left.
They recommended?
So it wasn't recommended that I carried on. They didn't actually have this conversation with me. They had it with my mum, and then my mum came in and said, Jonathan, we've decided you're not coming back next year. I was like, does that mean I can get a job? Yes, excellent. So I went and got a job, worked in a Michelin star restaurant, but I always had this vision that I wanted to work in sales. Applied for loads of sales jobs, couldn't get a job in sales, but got a job as an account manager within a payment protection centre. So we were doing all the reclaims, and my job was to get the claims in, process them, send them to the ombudsman, send them to the FSB, and get people's refunds. We take 25%. They soon realised that pipeline management and managing the claims wasn't something I was great at. I'm not very organised. I really have to focus on making sure our CRM is up to date, or I have to give myself a slap on the wrist. But they realised I wasn't very good at that. But at the top end of the office was the sales team. And the sales team all had quite nice cars. And they all came in wearing suits. And they all had headsets. This was probably the start of wireless headsets. But they all had headsets and were walking up and down, talking with their hands. I spent hours looking at them going, that looks pretty cool up there. I'm not sure what it consists of, but I like talking to people. They're talking to people. That'd be brilliant. And eventually convinced the sales director there to put me over in the sales team. Took a few trials, and it went really well from there. I mean, I always had a gift for talking to people. Didn't really have a gift for listening at the time, which was something that I had to develop later on. But through that, I mean, worked for a number of different businesses under that header. The MD there was quite an entrepreneur, and he had about 4 different businesses, so I sort of knocked and bounced through quite a few of those. But then ended up falling into conference and event sales. Just saw a very nice basic on one of the job sites with a good OTE on it, and went into conference and event sales. I actually failed at that job. They gave me the option after I'd been there about 3 months, and they came to me and said, Jonathan, your results aren't where they need to be from a sales perspective. You've got 2 options. You either have to hit this target in 2 weeks, or we're going to have to take a view on your position within the company, which when I Googled it meant they were going to sack me. So I had the decision to make, and I decided from there that I was going to take the offer of the 2 weeks, and I was going to leave. So I left there and went to BT Local Business. And interestingly, I mean, it was going all right at BT Local Business. I wouldn't say it was going great, but I got a call back from the sales director who had previously got rid of me, and saying, Jonathan, we might have a role that we'd like to bring you back in for. We'd like someone to lead and change all of the training and development within the business. I thought, this is a bit odd. And I thought, well, things aren't going very well at BT. So, it wasn't really going anywhere, I'd say. So I rung her back and said, I'd love to. The thing is, it's just sort of going so well at BT at the moment. I mean, they've just got...
man.
And a company.
You're going to have to prize me away from this one.
Oh, absolutely.
Cross my palm.
A brief bit of negotiation, a bit of a change of job title, and I went back there, and from there it was there was a lot of things that needed changing culturally within the business. They had quite a lot of challenges and issues. The events and conferences industry, from a sales perspective, obviously massively changed over the last few weeks, but it's always been very competitive. You have to be extremely persistent. We were an outbound sales centre. We didn't do any inbound. You were sort of, the mick was taken out of you a little bit if you did inbound. It was order taking, which I think was an interesting view on things. But we were solely outbound, only did cold calling, no social selling, nothing. We got all our own leads. And they asked me to come in and completely shift and change the training structure that they got. They'd realised that there was an issue. It was only about 2 weeks long. And I don't know whether you found this time, but I think companies now are getting much better at looking at onboarding and inducting people, because there we had 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks intense training with me, and then they hit the phones, and there was a bit of coaching and mentoring that went on alongside that, but that was just seen as normal. And honestly, out of groups of 6 people that we probably bring on there, so we used to bring in big groups of 6 to man sales team, my target was to get 2 of them to stay. And at the time, so that's not very good odds, and 4 people out of that were leaving, and through the time that I was there, we increased that quite a lot. We lengthened the induction program. We stopped hiring experienced salespeople. We started going through to the universities and pulling people through from the university or graduates that had just left, and spending a lot more time training them. It actually worked out a lot more cost effective, because people were coming to us with no experience, they'd no prior bad behaviours, and as long as we went through that structure with them, and we designed an onboarding training structure for them, we got it to between 4 and 5 out of 6 would stay. Some people just found it wasn't for us. I mean, graduates, when they're coming through, sometimes want to try their hand at sales and go, oh, I possibly want to do this. But we made some really good changes within the business, but a complete change in direction from a recruitment perspective. And I think one of the biggest things that we built was a phenomenal sales culture. One of our sales offices was up in Blackburn. I'm quite local to Blackburn, which very strange place to have a sales office, but we were a bit incubated from the rest of the business there. And I was quite lucky. I went to work in the Birmingham office and the London office and the Manchester office. But Blackburn was a very incubated sales office. We didn't get involved in organising the events. We didn't get involved in marketing, operations, finance. We had a figure on the wall at the start of the week. And our whole office mentality was, how are we going to knock that figure off that board? And if we hit it, we would finish early. We'd be at the pub having drinks. We learned quite a few lessons around incentives, because we started doing an incentive where if you got a deal, you could go to the fridge in the office and get yourself a beer and get yourself a drink. fantastic incentive, works very well, apart from when the CEO came in and went, oh, it sounds really buzzing in here. And one of the guys walked past me and the CEO and went, oh, I just got a deal in Finch. And walked to the fridge and got a gin and tonic. And this was about 10 in the morning. So we realised we had to change things a little bit there, but we worked through that. But one of the things that we had really well there was culture, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But it was really massive to make sure we got that behind. Moved on from there over to the university. One of the things that happened to me while I was at GovNet was a guy called Sam Brown came in, fantastic head of sales, brilliant guy. And the way that we were being managed was very, I'd say, old school. There was, if people weren't performing, it was, let's get a bigger stick, or let's look at what we need to do to in some ways, threaten that person to perform. And while he did make you pull your socks up very quickly, if you were seen to be failing, you could very quickly get left by the wayside. So moving on from there, Sam came in and showed me that there was a different way of working, a different way of inspiring the team, a different way of getting everyone behind. Sam didn't have a stick in his armour. It was something that never came out. It was all around. You always had time to speak to you. Always had friends. He set up a WhatsApp group called Sales Gods, and it was just little things like that, little touch points that brought us all together. And we did some phenomenal things at that business. I was then supposed to be leaving to go and work with Sam at another company, but was headhunted by the University of Salford. I got a message from their CEO, who was CEO of the commercial division, and just said, I'd love you to come in for a conversation. I've followed you on LinkedIn, and I sort of know who you are and what you've done. It'd be really good to have a conversation. And since I found it was one of the directors at GovNet who'd actually given a bit of a nudge to the CEO to say that I was going to be leaving. University taught me a hell of a lot. We were trying to commercialise what in essence was a public sector organisation. And for anyone who has worked in the public sector, things do operate very differently. Systems, processes. One of the biggest challenges, and I never anticipated this when I got there, when I looked at the model, but we were a commercial division of the university. So we were solely focused on taking anything the university had as an asset and selling it to the commercial sector. The issue that we had was at the end of the year, any profits that we had were gifted back to the university. So any profits that we made that in a commercial business would usually, a big proportion of that would be invested back into the business to give it a kick for the next year. We didn't have that. So as soon as we got to year end, it was pretty much back to scratch again. And if I was trying to recruit, I had to try and find it from anywhere to pull that budget together to bring someone in. So very difficult in some ways to grow. But the team, it had grown to quite a large department. We're turning over a good few million. And the CEO had done a great job. There was a really good pillar structure. You had the CEO, the operations director, and the finance director. The finance director made sure that everyone's heads were straight and they were on track for the finance. Operations director was your troubleshooter. You'd go to ops director Dave for anything that you need for that. And Mark was the typical entrepreneur, always looking at the next thing, trying to find the next big idea, and he's very good at that. And between them, it really worked. And while I was there, though, I was probably there for about 7 months. Two of them resigned and left and went and set up another business. And the finance director took over, which was an interesting experience. I've obviously, as a salesperson, you do have interactions with finance, but predominantly at that point, I'd mainly been incubated really to working within sales teams. And I was spending a lot more time with the finance director. And for anyone who's worked with an FD, their heads normally work quite differently from sales. It's normally a very different characteristic and trait you have to have. You've normally got to be a little bit more sensible than the sales team about
slightly more methodical.
Methodical, yeah. I think that's I'm not gonna. I feel like I could very quickly slate a lot of salespeople, myself included, in the next sentence. So I'll leave that one. But the whole culture, and I think everything that we'd done over the 6-7 months that I'd been there had changed and shifted. The whole feeling in the office really changed. It was a very, very difficult time. I really struggled with my own mental health. There was times when I was stood in the toilets there, the cubicles. I can remember the feeling now, and I remember the 2 cubicles. And I was still not a heavy smoker at the time, but I was a tremendously heavy smoker of the e-cigarette. I'd gone, I don't smoke anymore, I'll get an e-cig. The problem with e-cigs, you can smoke them everywhere. Brilliant idea. How can we take in more nicotine, not just go out for some, we can just smoke them anywhere. So I was forever running into the toilets and sitting and smoking that e-cig. The university eventually sent something around saying, stop smoking e-cigs at your desks. It's disgusting. The rest of the office are complaining. So that's fine. We'll just go into the toilets. So there's normally a nice cloud of smoke above the toilets. But there was so many times when one of the mistakes that I made as a senior leader within the university, I was still kind of sales director there and took over eventually quite a large department. When your sales manager you can solve all your team's problems. If one of them has a problem, normally, unless it's something huge, you can jump on it, can solve it, and can give it back to them. You can't do that as sales director. You've got, at the time, I had 28 direct reports and 4 managers. And rather than passing some of the problems back to the managers, I decided that I was going to try and take on all those problems because it was what I was used to. It was what I'd done for so many years. And when people were coming to me with an issue, I'd try and solve it rather than teaching them how to solve it.
I can feel your to-do list. I can feel your to-do list going through the roof.
I've still got, I mean, I know I spoke to you before about it, but I've got a journal that I write in most nights. I would say every night, 2 or 3 times a week. I make sure that I empty my head into it. But it was ironic, really, because it's something else I will probably move on to, but it really helps me with my mental health, writing in my journal. But it was something that Richard Branson talked about in a lot of his audiobooks. And Richard Branson talked about it saved him a lot of times when he's come to, one of them was a lawsuit. Someone had put a lawsuit against him about something that had been said in a meeting, and he brought up one of his old journals, put it in front and said, no, this was what was said in the meeting. I wrote it down, I took it to heart. And for the last 3 years, I've sort of written down journals. And towards the end of my time at the university, I decided that I was going to leave. Had a really bad a couple of experiences, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But at the end of it, when I left on the day, they put me on garden leave immediately and sort of marched me out of the office. I came back home and I had 2 missed calls from the university saying, you've taken your laptop bag, you've got your laptop bag, can you bring it back immediately? We're worried about data. I said, I'm not coming back today, I'll bring it back for you tomorrow. I've just got home and I need to sort my head out. It was very quick when I was taken out on garden leave. And interestingly, two months later, the university got back in contact with me and said, we'd like to bring you in. We think there's been a data breach somewhere. We potentially think it's you.
Whoa.
Very interesting. So one of the things that we were sort of running through, I got brought back in. It wasn't a formal interview. They didn't bring anyone in formally. But one of the things they kept asking was, you left on that day and then you took your laptop home, and we've looked at that. You may have been on the system. You may have taken some stuff. We can't check it. So why did you leave? Is it because you're going to a competitor? There wasn't actually a data breach. They were worried I was going to one of their competitors. And I wasn't. I was setting up on my own. But they were worried that I was going to a competitor and I was going to break my clause that I couldn't go anywhere else. And interestingly, my journal, I had it, and I brought back all the things that had happened to me while I was at the university, some of which weren't a great experience, and talked through these were the reasons that I left. And having that paper record of those things, some of it I'd written in the evenings about an experience that had happened, but having those in a meeting like that and being able to go, well, on the 23rd, this is what I put in that evening, so that's what happened within that day. Having that amount of information in front of you, not only having a journal from a mental health perspective can really help, but being able to go back through it, if you ever have anything that you need to run back through it for, and look at where you were at what point in time, it's hugely important. And
now, I don't do a journal, but I don't do a journal, but I keep hearing that it's so good for you. And I know people that do. Is it, tell me, you open a page, you write 23rd of June on, and that's it. As far as protocol goes, that's it. You just write down whatever you want.
I write at the very top of it a hashtag. It's a silly habit I've got in the habit of doing, but I'll just put a little hashtag at the top of it and whatever I'm thinking, whatever. So today might be hashtag Wellity, and then I'll talk a little bit about Wellity and the things that we've done today. Tomorrow's might be hashtag got 3 proposals out, whatever's in my head, whatever I think, because I'm the only one who reads this. Nobody else ever reads my journal.
That would be my first worry. That would be my first worry. What if I leave this hanging around? What if
you leave it hanging around? As far as I'm concerned, if someone wants to listen to the ramblings that go on in my head and they want to read that, flipping out, more fool them. It is solely for me. The biggest thing that I get from having a journal, though, and keeping it, is perspective. Because if I'm worried and I'm really stressed and I'm struggling, which does happens to all of us, if I look back 6 months and read what was in my head 6 months ago, a lot of the time I will look at it and go, flipping heck, 6 months ago, I was feeling like this, I was stressed, I was worried, and it was for that one problem there. That's a problem that I experience every single day now, and just solve. It's just something I'm used to, and I just go, oh, well, we've done that, we'll sort it. So then I think about, well, what problems am I looking at now in 6 months' time or a year's time? I'm going to look back on these problems and go, flipping heck, I can't believe that was something that was keeping you up at night. And that sense of perspective for me is massively important. The other thing that I put in my journal, this is personal to you, so if you're going to create one, it is whatever you want to make it. But whenever I read a book, I've got a load of little tiny sticky tabs that you put on the edge of pages. And when I've finished a book, throughout that book, I'll have stuck on sticky tabs. I never have a book in front of me without my sticky tabs. So at the end of the book, I'll have 10 sticky tabs on different pages. And I'll then just go through the book and go, oh, yeah, that was an interesting point. Note it in my journal. Go through it. That was an interesting point. So when I look back through my journal, any books that I've read, I've got a little archive of the 10, 15, 25, whatever number that is, different things that I took from that book. Because whenever you read a book, you might take 5% of it to heart. The other 95%, you go, that's interesting, but not for me.
I think there's a business opportunity there. I think if you went back through your journal and just got all your sticky bits, put them all together in one book, one total book, and you summarized every book that you've read, I say, well, I'd read that one.
Well, again, that's something that'd be interesting for me. You'd read it and go, 5%'s that interesting. The other 95%'s rubbish.
Jonathan, when you said you had you were in the toilets, and I know you were having to go on the vape, on the e-cig and everything else, and I think you said your hand was against the door, and you kind of, was that your first experience of mental health?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I've always. I'm just thinking back to my career before that. I always heard about mental health. Always read about mental health. I knew what I suppose a mental breakdown was. One of my friend's parents, when we were very young, had a mental breakdown. Didn't understand it at the time, but knew it was a thing. I'm very optimistic as a person. Whatever you throw at me, normally I can throw you back a positive in it, and I think it's one of my biggest assets. It's not my skill set, it is my mentality. That is something I get from my dad. My dad is the happiest person I've ever met. His famous quote was, he said to me a while ago, I said, are you having a good day? And he went, I don't have good days. I have excellent days and amazing days. And I thought, he's just judging excellent days and amazing days by normally what people do, good and bad days. So my dad only has excellent or amazing. Those are the only two categories. He doesn't have bad days. And there was a time last year, my dad lost his dad when I said, how are you doing? And he went, I've had a bad day.
Yeah.
That's the only time that I can ever remember, really, my dad having bad days. But I'm very lucky in that respect, that I get that optimism from him. I can learn a heck of a lot from my dad in that respect.
So presumably you didn't know what happened then on this day, because what you were sort of hard tuned for, something else sideswiped you from the side.
Yeah, this was something. I mean, that I say that moment stood in the toilet having me sick. That wasn't just a moment. That was something that I did on a daily basis. I came to the point where I had more problems coming at me than I had solutions for, and I'm quite a resourceful person. I can normally find a good solution for everything, or if not, I can put it on hold and go and find the resources that I need to solve that thing. But the to-do list was getting longer. I was traveling an hour and a half there in the morning, an hour and a half back in the evening. And as soon as I was back home, I was sat in the office here for 2-3 hours doing all the stuff that I didn't get done at work. And I didn't have a life. I was in a bad relationship at the time. Don't mind saying that. It wasn't a great relationship for myself or for the other person involved. So that was very difficult. And there was a number of moments where I just thought, like, what do I do? What's the next step for me? I mean, weirdly, my go-to was to go back to Sam that I spoke about at GovNet. Sam offered me some phone calls and support during that period of time. He'd been there for me through GovNet and showed me a different way to do things. And you know, that was the one thing I think I've always really missed at the time, was having a mentor, someone to look up to, and someone to go. I mean, me and Sam wouldn't call it officially mentoring, but he was a mentor for me through that time, and that's taught me now. I mean, I've got 2 different people that do mentoring with me. Both very different, both give me such different value and in completely different ways. But it gives me something to constantly be accountable for and to be striving for, I think.
Just to give you a bit of authenticity, so that the questions aren't just coming from me to you, and you don't. I mean, Wellity was born out of the fact that I had a bit of a rough time for a year and a half. My rough time, when I look back on it, was because I was pretty much isolated working, and I had my inner critic, and I didn't have that sounding board. Now, I've really taken that on board, whether it be a life coach or whether it be just, actually this day to day is talking to people like you is a massive outlet for me. Really good outlet, because at the time you think, I've not got all the answers, it must be me, I'm rubbish. And you do need someone just to step in, don't you, at some point? Hand on the shoulder job.
And I think, timescales wise, it's always a bit fuzzy when I look back on this period of time as to what it was. But there was a defining moment for me when I realised something had to change. Either I had to change and I had to really upscale. The one thing that I did at the university that massively, massively helped me was, it took me an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back every single day. I used that time massively to my benefit. It was dead time in the car. I could have had Rock FM on, could have had the radio on. I always had an audio book on. I always had something on YouTube. I always had a podcast on. And over that whole time, I think if I look back through my Audible library, I think I went through something along the lines of about 40, 50 books during that time using that. And I couldn't keep up from a professional development point enough as I was needed to within the business. There were still things that I couldn't grasp quick enough. But there was a moment when I was driving home one afternoon. I was driving down the M6, and it had been a very difficult day at work. Huge stresses from everybody. And I was driving along, and I couldn't work out what was happening to me. My breathing got heavier. I felt like I was having a heart attack, what I thought was a heart attack. And I pulled over on the side of the motorway, and I sat there, and I don't know, panic attack, broke down. My body was just reacting, absolutely reacting. And I sat there for 10, 15 minutes. A police officer ended up pulling down the hard shoulder with blues and twos on, which didn't actually help things, to be honest.
I bet it didn't.
But she pulled over and she knocked on the window. I struggled to open the car. I ended up opening the car, and she said, are you okay? And she ended up getting in the car and speaking to me for about 20, 25 minutes. It seemed like ages, but it was probably 20, 25 minutes. And she calmed me down. She said, you're okay. You're having a panic attack. Do I need to call an ambulance? I don't know. I don't think so. And before she got in, I thought I was having a heart attack. I actually thought 999 was going to be on the phone. And she got in and started chatting to me. She calmed me down a little bit. And 20, 25 minutes later, she followed me off the hard shoulder, and I drove home. And I realized at that point that what I was doing wasn't sustainable. From a mental perspective, a physical perspective, I was smashing the e-cig, eating takeaways because I didn't have time to eat. I'd normally pick a takeaway up on the way home from work, because I knew I wasn't going to have time to put everything together. And I realized then that something had to change. And whenever I think you get to a turning point like that in your life, the main thing that has to change normally is either your circumstances or it's you. You either have to upskill to be able to do that role, or you have to change your circumstances. And I've been reasonably smart with my money at the university. I've never been good at saving previously, but I read a great book called The Richest Man in Babylon. If anyone's not read it, fantastic book. George S. Clayson, I think it's by. But really good book. It teaches you some very simple money management techniques about when you get paid, take 10% or 20% of your wage and put it somewhere. Pretend it doesn't exist. Once you've got a little nest egg there, that nest egg will make money for you. Once you've got money, it's reasonably easy to make more money. I'd been stashing a little bit away, and I looked at my bank balance, and I can't remember the exact amount, 8-9 grand I had. And I sort of looked at it and went, if I really strip back my spending, what do I need to survive? And I thought, well, to survive, I actually need to pay my rent, my mortgage, my car, and weighed it all up. And I thought, even with a couple of trips to the pub a month, I can probably do it for about 1,700 quid. So I thought, well, I've got 4 or 5 months worth of salary in the bank there. As long as I don't go nuts and go on too many holidays and do stupid things, I've got that money there. What's stopping me from going out and selling all the things that I know? I've had a great career in training and development, a great career in setting up sales teams. There must be a company out there that would find some value out of that. There must be someone. And I left the university, went on garden leave, and talked to you about all the stuff that ended up getting pulled back in and giving my laptop back and everything. But within 2 weeks of me leaving that job, I had a retainer with a company for the next 6 months that they were going to pay me $2 grand a month to come in and help them change their sales team. And it was a complete change for me. That I think one of the things for me that I realized was I was valuable in the market sector, because I never felt massively valued in the 2 companies that I've been in before. And I think looking back, afterwards, having spoken to different people in both of those companies, I was hugely valued in that company, hugely valued in both of them. But I never saw that. I never really took the time to appreciate that. And I've still got some great friends from both of those businesses, some really good friends. But I think that up until the point of Sales Geek was my career pre-Sales Geek, I think.
Well, look, I really enjoyed listening to that. And as always, thank you for sharing your story, because it's not just, it might be therapeutic to you, but hundreds of others who are listening. I mean, panic attacks as you're driving aren't a rare thing, and panic attacks at work, but also it's the ability to feel uncomfortable in your surroundings. And the point I'm trying to get across is it's not you that's the fault. It might be, just like you said, your circumstances. And there's this great thing that I heard, which is, there's a fish and it's watching squirrels running up a tree, and the fish feels stupid. It feels alienated and really, really stupid because they can do it. But of course, put the fish in water and it swims, it's in its environment, and it suddenly gets its self-esteem and everything else back. So my point is that it might just be like you've absolutely nailed, it's circumstance, or you're just in the wrong environment. And you know what, I really can't wait until I hear now all of what's this made you, and then what you're doing with Sales Geek. And what you've just alluded to then was that it comes down to value, self-worth, and purpose, I would summarize in those. And that's pretty good energy to have behind you, isn't it? When you know that something works and you've made it. What happened then? How did you get into Sales Geek?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on one of the things that I think you said there as well. I mean, when I was at the university, I constantly felt like a failure. I felt like I was failing. After leaving and looking back at what we did there, I look back on that as one of my biggest achievements. The fact that I held down that role for so long, the things that I did within the department, the whole team culture changes that we did within that time. At the time, you often don't notice those things, but I think for anyone who is struggling or in that role like I was at the time, take some time to reflect. Take some time to reflect on what you've done and the things that you have achieved during that time. Because I actually got to the end of that period and I looked at my CV. This was how I reflected and looked at my CV. And I looked at it and all the different parts of it. And I thought, actually, that's quite an achievement. All of the things that I've done there, all the things that I've done at the company previously and all of my background, there's a lot on there that I can go back and actually reflect on. But when you sat there in the moment, you're going, I'm useless. I'm useless, I'm failing, I'm not good enough. But that sense of perspective really, really makes a difference.
I think we're cut from the same cloth, because this Wellity is version 2 Wellity. The version Wellity 1 was to do with health and well-being, but I was working so hard and long and isolated with other life things coming at me that I just couldn't go anymore. It burnt out effectively, and that gave me my appreciation of mental health and well-being. Then I had to go and take that period of effective lockdown to go and think, what was I doing? What have I learned? Now I look back and think, we had interviews with Gabby Logan, we had Dylan Hartley, we had England rugby players, we had all this other stuff. How did I manage to get that? I thought I was absolutely useless at the time, and I could be able to pick up the phone and speak to people and get them on board. So it was armed with that made me think, well, that will only be a failure. I'll only look back on that as a failure if nothing else works in the future as a result of the learnings from that one, if that makes any sense at all. So Wellity version 2, following my purpose with mental health and sales and well-being, if this works and everything is leading to the fact that it is because it's so authentic, because there's no guard with it, then that first learning process was just part of this journey and it hasn't failed.
And I think one of the things that we've done as a business, and for anyone who's listening that is struggling as to where would I start to do that, one of the best ways that you can look at your achievements, enter yourself into an award, whether it's FISM, whether it's salesperson of the year, customer service person of the year, whether you're entering your company in, enter yourself for an award, because it forces you to sit there and go, I've got to put the best bit of me forward here for this award. And what you end up doing is listing all your achievements and going through that process. We've done it for Sales Geek. We were very lucky this year. We entered 3 Red Rose Awards, and the process of going through each one of those and actually putting forward, Luminette, we did that. Luminette, we did that. Forgot about that. Wow, doesn't that sound good? And you end up with this phenomenal list at the end of it, and to just sit there and go, Luminette, it's not. Yeah, I've really been focusing on the wrong thing, and it just gives you that bit of perspective. The shift of focusing on the positives rather than just focusing on the negatives.
Just on that, I had a conversation yesterday with someone that was feeling a bit down and out about themselves and this, that, and the other, weren't quite sure where to go. It's amazing how many people are contacting privately, which I love and I have responsibility for. But they were saying when they were looking at all the negative bits, I said, okay, fine. All right, look at the negative bits. That's okay. But just note down the positive bits of what you can do. And honestly, they had about 3 negatives, which were taking over their whole thing, and a whole list of positives. And actually, she said, it's a bit like looking in the mirror. I think, my tummy's too big and I don't know, whatever it is, don't like my hair. But actually, name the things you do like. I like my smile, I like my eyes, I like the way I look. And suddenly the list grows. And it's amazing. You are what you think. And the power of thought and mindset and thinking about the positives, you suddenly transform into them.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a member of the team that I used to have at the university. He was a very negative thinker and came to me one day, and we were planning to launch a new event. And he went, I've got 5 reasons why this new event isn't going to work. I said, you do realise that if you come to me with one good reason, you don't need the other 4. We just won't do it. If you've got one good reason why this isn't going to work, that's enough. He spent all his time coming up with 5 reasons, just to have backup reasons why something won't work. And I think one thing that I have always noticed in it, like I say, I'm very positive as a person, but other people do struggle with that. I sometimes struggle. One negative will sit on my mind and sit on my mind and sit on my mind. For me, the greatest release is that reflection, and that might be going back through journal. That might be going back through and listing and thinking of those things that you've done and that you've achieved. But it's very easy to get inside your own head. And the other thing to do, I mean, is text someone else and go, what's 3 things that you think I've done well this year? Ask them outright. You know, WhatsApp's a phenomenal communication tool. It's instant. Everybody gets WhatsApp straight away. And if you're feeling like that, reach out to someone you know, someone you love, and go, tell me 3 things that you think I've done well this year.
And you know, the first thing I'm going to do later on is do the journal. So I'm going to start a journal, because if anyone says anything's helping them, the other thing I'm getting from you is just talk to people. It's such a nice time now. Like, you know, all big, strong guys, whatever strong is nowadays. Strong to me is authentic. And, but, you know, just to say, maybe I'm struggling a bit, because there was a sales convention recently. Went away for 3 days, and the people that were on it will know what I'm talking about, and you'll know them, I'm sure. It came to about 11 o'clock, half 11. We'd all drunk too much, which was a fantastic evening. And someone chipped in about mental health. Someone chipped in about this. And I tell you what, it lit a fire. And we had the most interesting conversation for about, I mean, that was our excuse for drinking for another 2 hours, really, obviously. But everything came out from, you know, depression to being under pressure to, you know, being part of, you know, not earning as much as someone else. But it wasn't said with downbeat, it was said with support. And it was such a lovely conversation.
And I think, you know, you've hit a massive nail on the head there. The support is a key part of it, but also having that outlet. And I think everybody, if you're in sales, you're going to need an outlet. There's only so much pressure you can put in something before it bursts, unless you've got a way of letting that out, so that sometimes it can build back up. We all have stressful days. Today, for me, has been non-stop since about 6:30 this morning. I had half an hour for lunch, but this is stress-free for me. I know that I'll have a nice evening, nice afternoon now that we've had a long conversation. It de-stresses you. Finding what that is. For me, it's hanging out with people. For me, it's talking to other people, learning from other people. If I don't feel like I'm moving forward, I feel like I'm moving backwards. So I have to do a certain amount of professional development as I'm going along, but I also have to make sure that I'm speaking to more experienced people than myself and reaching out. I think you had Tamara on, didn't you? Tamara McMillan?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Well, I spotted her on your podcast, and I went, I really need to get in contact with her. So I reached out to her. We spent half an hour. I got some recording out of it. She was fantastic. She was brilliant. Yeah, so much more experienced than I am. She's got so many years behind her. And I'm sure I pulled out some gems from that conversation. I pulled out some absolute gems. And I think another point there, don't be scared to reach out to people. You see people on LinkedIn and go, flipping out, I'd love to talk to that person. Reach out, ask them a message.
Well, we did, didn't we? We did. And it's like, you know, Chris Brindley, MBA, he headed up the Metro Bank, and he's chair of the Rugby League 2021 World Cup. I reached out to him. He came back to me within hours and spent an hour and a half on the podcast on leadership and authentic and everything else, as well as many others. And with this subject around well-being and health and well-being, when you've experienced it, I say, it's only when you've been to the bottom of the ocean and seen what's there that you can tell people what is down there. I feel a responsibility almost now to, for God's sake, talk about it, you know, to the point where everyone's normal. You're normal, and if someone's emotion, if someone's a human being with emotion that goes up and down, we're all on this chart. So who are we kidding? And do you know what? It's the most therapeutic thing to just start a conversation, and then for someone else to come back at you with, thank you. This is what's going on with me.
The sales industry, I mean, it has been in the past put forward. It's a very macho industry. You know, we are sales. We go and we call it getting shit done. It's very macho though as an industry. And I do think that we're getting better at that. I think a lot of companies are getting better at that, but I do think that we've still got quite a way to go. At sales, I think you're one of the most you're most at risk in the departments. You're constantly getting told no. And you know that for every 10 no's you get, you're going to get 1 yes, which is a 1 in 10 ratio of endorphins. So yeah, you don't get an endorphin when someone goes no. You don't go, on. And we tried to spin that around and have competitions about who could get the most no's in a day, and eventually people would get yeses. But I think that ability to, as a group, be able to go, oh, I've had an awful day, I've had a really bad day, and for people not to go, oh, right, well, you know, you should be smashing it, you need to get better and not talk about it. But that ability to have other people within the office that you can talk to, and you can go, I've had a bad day, and they go, that's okay. That's okay. What's happened? Yeah. Anything I can help you with? Anything I can improve on? I've got a great belief that nobody ever entered the sales profession going, do you know what? I'm just going to be average. Just fancy being average, maybe a bit below average. Everybody gets into sales because they want to smash it. They want to hit the big figures.
And everyone needs a game phase. You see, this is the problem. So at the moment, if you go and report your mental health, you're like, well, hang on, I've just built up a whole career, 20 years of game phase. Now you're going to know this. I'm unraveling it. Then do I have to bring it up again? And will I ever get it back and be the same person? And if the emotions are going like that, but your performance has always got to be high level, there are going to be gaps. And it's that what I think is different in sales, because you have to up your game face so much.
And the difficulty I think you've always got, and there's always, not always, but I think we are changing slightly, but the stigma is within the sales department. You go in as you interview and you sell yourself in. Mate, I'm fantastic. Last year, built £1 million. Honestly, right. Unbelievable. It was so good. You're going to love me. The team's going to love me. I'm going to hit your figures. It's going to be mint.
I'm here. Relax.
You get yourself in. You get the job. You get a couple of months into it and you go, I'm not struggling. I'm not doing as well as I could here. Well, shall I put my hand up and go, listen, I'm struggling after I've just stood at interview and told you that I'm unbelievable? And I think we are getting better at interviews. I mean, one of the things that we do from interviews, whenever we were interviewing from Sales Geek, and we've done some great campaigns for companies, we've started off by getting them to send a video in. So before we even look at CVs, we email out and say, like, put the job advert out and go, send your CV if you want. We're not even going to look at it. If you do want to be involved, send a 60-second video clip talking to camera about what you know about the business, why you want to be involved here, and what's the biggest mistake you've made this year. So there's 2 positives there, or just something to get to know, and 1 negative thing we've got to say there. From the first time that we did it, we actually asked for CVs to start. We got 80 CVs, didn't look at a single one of them. Then messaged out to all of them going, right, thanks, we haven't looked at your CVs. Next part of the interview process, send us a 60-second video. 14 people got back from 80 CVs. Couldn't believe it. Thought there was more in it than that. But it helped us whittle that down. And there were a few videos there that I looked at the people on that video and went, that's someone I want to meet. I want to meet that guy. I want to meet that girl. I want them to come for interview because they give me a bit of life, a bit of energy. And then when we got them in, it was really interesting getting them to talk about the weaknesses and talk about the negatives. Because if they do that in interview, they've then got nothing to hide. They've talked to you about it and gone, what are your 3 biggest weaknesses? Typical interview question. What are your biggest weaknesses? Well, sometimes I turn up too early. No, come on, give me a proper one. That's a really good
answer. I work too hard sometimes.
And if ever, I mean, my biggest weakness, I know, I've got many, but my biggest one is I really, really struggle to switch off. And I'm bloody unorganised. If I don't make sure that I've updated the CRM, I'm even thinking about it now. I haven't put 2 things in the CRM today that I should have put in there. If I don't do them by the end of the day, they're lost to the abyss. Might as well have not happened. I know those things though. When I focus on them, the team around me know that I'm unorganised. And Lucy, who's our ops director, and Emily, who's our business operations geek, are constantly on at me to do stuff. They know that I'm not good at this stuff. But they know what I am good at. They know if they've got a client that's not paying an invoice. They know if they've got a problem with a client, they can rely on me for that stuff. And it's stuff that they're not great at, but I'm good at. But I'm not good at the organisation, operational stuff.
But that makes you a good leader, though, because a good leader is not someone who can do everything because they don't exist. A good leader is someone who knows what they can and can't do, and for everything they can't do, put someone in to fill the gap to ensure that the greater goal.
We're very good as a business and as a leadership team. We've got five board members. We're very good at leaning on each other and knowing what everybody's skill sets are and what everybody's strengths are. We all give 110%. We're massively committed to the business, but we do know our strengths and weaknesses. And if I mean, today, for example, I got to a certain part of a proposal that I'm put together towards a client and looked at it and went, I don't even know whether this thing makes sense. Does this make sense? So I sent it over to James, who's our chief strategy geek. And within 2 minutes, James went, no, that doesn't make sense. He sorted it for me. He sends it back to me and goes, I've added a few bits here that you needed to tweak. And it's knowing your weaknesses. Once you know them, you can start filling in those gaps. You can start working with other people that are going to help you fill those bits in.
Right, look, what is Sales Geek? Tell me. I'm dying to know. I've obviously done a bit of research, but I want to hear it straight from you.
What do we do at Sales Geek? Our mission is to change the way that the world sees sales.
Yes.
We are on an absolute mission on that. We're non-stop, full steam ahead. We've had some brilliant growth years. We last year grew by eight team members. We grew from a team of 3 up to a group of 11 now. 11 of us within the business. We go into businesses and we do training, we do consultancy, we do a part-time sales director service, and we do transformational sales projects. All sounds very corporate-y. In essence, we just make things go quicker within a sales department. We help people within the sales department create culture. We're pretty good, fun people to be around. Every one of our team is brilliant fun. We ignite a lot of energy into things. If you put us into a sales team, you can guarantee there will be a lot of energy in that room and we get things moving. But in essence, sales is relatively simple. Find something people want, go and offer it to them and get them to buy it, then get them to buy it again. And it's relatively simple. We really overcomplicate it. And I think we're very good at simplifying that down. We work with a lot of businesses that are trying to, we call it paralysis by analysis, so trying to analyze things too much and don't focus on the end result. The end result of the sales team is to make sales. So why are we monitoring the calls? Because the calls make sales. No. The right calls make sales. The wrong calls just wasted everybody's time. Actually, they're a cost because you're paying them to do it. And there's some very simple metrics that you can put into sales teams that helps people measure those things. I mean, I've been a great believer from a one-to-one perspective. If ever I had a one-to-one with a team member or a performance review, if they were on target, we'll sit and chat for half an hour, see if they need anything, but I'm not going to run them through the KPIs. I'm not going to run them through the call sheets. If they need anything from me, that's great. I'm here for them. But if someone isn't performing, then that's something I've done wrong. So there's certain things that I need to do and help them, coach them through, which some of that might be metrics based. But if I'm measuring them on the amount of calls that they're doing, I then can't be measuring them on the amount of sales that they're doing, because I'm going to focus on doing 100 calls rather than getting the sales. If I'm saying focus on the sales, then they might not need to do 100 calls. The metrics don't work out.
It seems to me like it's real fresh eyes on something, right? So we're talking about an injection of energy, pace, experience, expertise, and fresh eyes. Just like you sent that email to your proposal to your colleague, and you said, "Look, and they came back with fresh eyes and made it." That's effectively what you do, quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely. And I think it was someone that told me ages ago, like if you're trying to get to the North Pole and you head in a straight line to the North Pole, you can go as fast as you want. If you're 1 degree off, you're going to miss it though. You don't have to be off by much, just by 1 degree, you're going to miss it. You're not going to miss it by much, so you can correct yourself. If you're 10 degrees off, you go in full pelt, you're going to miss it even more. And the first thing you ever need to do in a sales department is make sure that there is alignment as to where you're getting to. And that's got to be alignment from the board. It's got to be alignment with the senior management team. It's got to be alignment with the sales team. In small businesses, that might just be alignment with the business owner and the salesperson, or just the business owner themselves. You've got to be aligned as to where you are getting to. Once you've got that destination in, it's then just a case of building back how you're going to get there. And a lot of companies, I mean, myself, similar in the past, when I used to write our sales reports and our sales strategy, I would sit in a dark room and do it on my own. We don't do that anymore. We get everyone involved in it, get the whole team behind what we're doing. If we're going to create a movement, why are we starting from the top? We want to start on the whole thing. And often your sales team in your business will have the best ideas. They're inspirational people. They're just not possibly being given a voice. They're sometimes not being given a chance to get some influence on it. And passing a strategy down from board to team member, that's the board strategy. It's not the team member strategy. The team member is just part of running it. Now, if you can get the team member to help design that strategy and the managers to help design it and the directors to help design it, you've then got a whole business that has helped design the thing. There's excitement there. People want to get to that thing and they will run through brick walls to get themselves there because they feel part of something.
Right. Well, here's the deal. You carry on redesigning the sales. We're obviously well-being, and we want to normalize the conversation of mental health and well-being to the sales industry. There's going to be plenty of crossover, and I'm going to come, be one of the first people I'm going to come and see when we're out of all this. Where are you based? Where can people find you?
We're based up in Lancashire, sunny Lancashire at the moment, which isn't normal, but it is sunny up in Lancashire today. So we're based between a little village called Clitheroe and a place called Blackburn that you've probably heard of. But absolutely, listen, get yourself up here on the train. I'll get myself down to see you as soon as this is over. Best way to get in contact with me is on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to speak to me, reach out, talk to me about mental health, talk to me about any issues, challenges. I'm more than happy for anyone to get in contact. If you don't know who to talk to me, talk to Simon, talk to somebody. That little change there of going, I wouldn't normally reach out, will open up a whole world of possibilities. If we can't help you, we know plenty of people within the sector that we can pass you over to, or at least put you in some resources or something to help you and get you back on track.
Thank you, Jonathan. You're now in the Wellity Hall of Fame. Although you're up in Blackburn, I presume this is a national thing, right? Because I'm seeing you everywhere.
Again, COVID's massively changed our business plan, really. I mean, weirdly, we're international now. Prior to COVID, we did have quite a few clients down south that we serviced through Zoom and other methods. But we've got a couple of international clients over in America now that got in contact with us and seen what we're doing on LinkedIn and gone, can we bring a bit of that over here? So we work all across the UK and if time zones permit, all across the world.
Yeah, and look, if from your experience, we're just going to try and wrap this up with one pretty big question. So, from your experience, cutting your teeth in sales, getting into the industry, getting through to senior leadership, your experiences at the side of the motorway, but also in certain roles, and then really finding your passion and purpose here. This is what this, and making people realize that everything is not failed. It's all learning that will eventually take you to a point, if you trust life, where you'll be able to use all those attributes. From everything that you've talked about, what is your definition of well-being?
That is a very good question. What is my definition of well-being? For me personally, I think the feeling of well-being, and this might be not what you're after as a response, but the feeling of well-being for me is feeling like I've got space around me to move around, feeling like I'm not claustrophobic, feeling like I've got options, feeling like I've got different directions, and not feeling trapped. And I think everybody at any point in time has all of those things, but having the ability to recognize those things and understanding that the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years of your life will be anything that you make of it. You're the one who's in control of this. And if you want to change the direction of it, you just need to change course a little bit. And I think that for me, I don't think you'd put that in the dictionary, would you? But that for me is the definition of how I see well-being for me, and when I know that I've got the right balance.
And I think that's an absolutely perfect answer. I was smiling from ear to ear then, because they're all personal answers, and just that feeling of slight air around you. And I said to you earlier, just sometimes we want to empty our heads of stuff, and you're saying it's all possible. So let's hope that inspires people. Now, look, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you've got those 2 things to put in the CRM, so I don't want to keep you much longer. I can see it ticking in your head.
They're just the 2 that I can remember. There'll be more than that.
Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Just a massive thanks from my perspective for having me on. It's a topic that I'm hugely passionate about. It's something that has taken control of that myself personally, and making sure that my mental health is on track, and that I'm in a good place from a wellbeing perspective, has allowed me to go further in the last few years than I was expecting to go in the next decade. I was very good at setting targets, but I've managed to exceed all of those. But it all starts with you. If you're not in the right shape and you're not in the right mindset to go and do those things, the rest of it doesn't matter. It's not possible. Right,
I feel a joint venture coming on here. Wherever we go, we want you there, and wherever you go, I want to be on your shoulder, talking the same message. Look, Jonathan, Finch, thank you ever so much for your time.
My pleasure. Big thank you for having me on.
Pleasure.